The massive alien ships appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning. They came without warning, blocking out the sun over major cities across the world. The ships were beautiful in a cold way, made of smooth metal that seemed to flow like water, but held its shape like steel. Ambassador Kethvar stood tall in his ceremonial armor as he looked down at the primitive world below. His species, the Zephyrians, had conquered over 3,000 planets in their long empire. Earth would be just another number on their list. The readings from their sensors showed a young species that had barely learned to leave their own planet. They had nuclear weapons, yes, but nothing that could threaten a galactic empire. These humans will submit easily, Kethvar told his officers. They always do when they see our power. The first meeting was set for Geneva, in the building where Earth's nations tried to solve their problems with words instead of weapons. Human leaders from every country came to meet the aliens. They brought their best diplomats, their smartest scientists, and their most important people. Dr. Lin Chen was one of those people. She worked as a translator for the United Nations and spoke 7 different languages. The aliens had somehow learned English, but they still needed help understanding human culture. Dr. Chen brought her 8-year-old daughter Maya because the meeting was supposed to be peaceful. Maya was a curious child with bright eyes and a smile that made everyone around her happy. The meeting room was large and formal. Humans sat on one side of a long table, while the Zephyrians stood on the other. The aliens were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished stone. Their eyes were large and completely black. They wore robes that seemed to be made of light itself. Kethvar spoke first. His voice was deep and echoed in the room even though he was not shouting. "People of Earth," he said, "we come from the Zephyrian Empire. We have traveled between the stars for 10,000 of your years. We have brought peace to countless worlds." The human diplomats looked at each other. They knew that when someone talked about bringing peace, it usually meant war was coming. "What kind of peace?" asked Secretary General Rodriguez. "The peace of order," Kethvar replied. "You will give us 30% of your planet's resources every year. You will allow our people to build bases on your world. In return, we will protect you from other dangers in the galaxy." "And if we refuse?" asked President Morrison. The alien's black eyes seemed to grow even darker. "Refusal is not wise. We have weapons that can burn your cities from space. Your primitive military cannot stop us." The room grew quiet. The humans had feared this moment since they first looked up at the stars. They were not alone in the universe, but their new neighbors were not friendly. Dr. Chen held her daughter's hand tightly. Maya was being very good, sitting quietly while the adults talked about scary things. But Maya was also very curious. She had never seen aliens before, and she wanted to get a better look at them. On the alien side of the table was a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. It sat on a metal stand and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Maya had never seen anything so beautiful. While her mother was listening to the aliens talk about tribute and submission, Maya quietly slipped away from her chair. The crystal was calling to her. Not with sound, but with light that seemed to dance and play. Maya walked around the table, staying quiet so she would not interrupt the important meeting. The aliens did not notice her at first. They were too busy explaining why humans had no choice but to obey. "Your species is young," Commander HFY was saying. "You have not learned the rules of the galaxy. The strong rule the weak. This is the natural order." Maya reached the crystal. It was even more beautiful up close. The light inside it moved like water, and she could see tiny sparks dancing within. She had always been told not to touch things that did not belong to her, but this was so pretty. Surely just one tiny touch would not hurt anything. Her small finger reached out and gently touched the crystal's surface. The crystal's light suddenly turned from blue to angry red. Every Zephyrian in the room froze. Their black eyes turned to look at the little human girl who had just touched their most sacred object. "Impossible," whispered Kethvar. "The heart of truth has been defiled." Dr. Chen looked around and saw her daughter standing next to the aliens. Her heart stopped. "Maya, come back here right now!" But it was too late. Commander HFY stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. The crystal was more than just pretty to the Zephyrians. It was their most holy object, something that only their highest priests were allowed to touch. For an alien, especially a primitive child, to touch it was the worst insult possible. "The Sacred Heart has been contaminated," HFY said, his voice shaking with anger. "This cannot be forgiven." "She's just a child," Dr. Chen said, running toward her daughter. "She didn't know. I'm sorry. We're sorry." "Ignorance is no excuse," HFY replied. He raised his hand, and energy began to glow around his fingers. "The penalty for touching the heart of truth is death." "No, wait!" shouted Secretary General Rodriguez. "We can discuss this. There must be another way." But Vexhai was beyond listening. In his culture, some crimes were so terrible that only death could balance them. The energy in his hand grew brighter. Maya looked up at the tall alien. She did not understand why he was so angry. She had only touched the pretty crystal. "I'm sorry," she said in her small voice. "I didn't mean to break anything." "Too late," Vexhai said, and he fired. The energy beam hit Maya in the chest. The little girl fell to the floor without making a sound. Her mother's scream filled the room. Dr. Chen ran to her daughter and held her, but Maya's eyes were already empty. The child who had just wanted to see something beautiful was gone. The room erupted in chaos. Human security guards reached for their weapons, but the aliens were faster. More energy beams filled the air, forcing the humans to take cover. But the damage was already done. The most important damage was not to the walls or the furniture. It was to the trust between two species. "You killed a child," President Morrison said, his voice filled with horror and rage. "An innocent child." Kethvar looked down at the small body and felt something like regret. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. "The commander acted according to our laws," he said, but his voice was not as sure as before. "Your laws are evil," Dr. Chen said, tears streaming down her face as she held her daughter. She was 8 years old. She was curious. That's what children do. Within minutes, every camera and phone in the building was sending the image around the world. Maya Chen, lying still on the floor of the United Nations building, killed by aliens for touching something pretty. The picture spread across the internet faster than wildfire. Every human on Earth saw it within hours. The Zephyrians left that day, promising to return in 6 months for Earth's answer about surrender. They thought the humans would be so scared after seeing their power that they would give up without a fight. They had never been more wrong about anything in their 10,000 years of conquest. They had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. They had killed a human child in front of her mother and the world. The galaxy was about to learn what humans do when someone hurts their young. Maya Chen's funeral was 3 days later. The whole world watched. Her small white coffin sat in the center of the United Nations building, surrounded by flowers from every country on Earth. Presidents and prime ministers sat next to ordinary people who had never met Maya but felt like they had lost their own child. The little girl's picture was everywhere, on buildings, on websites, on signs that people held in the streets. Dr. Lin Chen stood at the podium to speak about her daughter. Her face was pale, but her voice was strong. The whole world listened as she talked about Maya's favorite books, her love of butterflies, and how she always asked questions about everything. "My daughter died because she was curious," Dr. Chen said. "She touched something beautiful because that's what children do. They explore, they wonder, they reach out to touch the world around them." Her voice got stronger as she spoke. "The aliens think we are weak because we are young among the stars, but they have never seen what humans do when someone hurts our children." Those words spread around the world faster than any news had ever traveled. Within hours, they were being spoken in every language on Earth. Signs appeared in windows saying, "For Maya." People who had never cared about space or aliens suddenly wanted to know everything about the Zephyrian Empire. But something bigger was happening, something the aliens could not have expected. The world's leaders met in secret that same night. For the first time in human history, they made a decision together. Every war stopped. Every border dispute was put aside. Every trade argument was forgotten. The United States called Russia. China called India. Israel called Palestine. Old enemies became allies in a single day. "We are not fighting each other anymore," announced President Morrison on television. "We have a real enemy now, one that kills children for being curious." The Terran Defense Coalition was born 72 hours after Maya's death. Every nation on Earth joined. Every military became part of one huge army. Every scientist began working on the same project. Every factory started making the same things. Dr. Sarah Chen, Maya's aunt, was a quantum physicist at MIT. She had been working on theoretical problems that might have applications in 50 years. Now she was put in charge of Project Prometheus, with unlimited funding and the best minds from every country. "We have 6 months," she told her team on the first day. 6 months to go from nuclear weapons to whatever it takes to fight a galactic empire. "That's impossible," said Dr. Petrov from Moscow. "So was killing an 8-year-old girl for touching a crystal," Sarah replied. "We're going to do impossible things now." The work began immediately. In underground bunkers that were built during the Cold War, scientists from enemy nations worked side by side. The Chinese shared their quantum computer designs. The Americans gave away their nuclear secrets. The Europeans opened their particle accelerator data. The Russians provided their rocket technology. But they were not just sharing what they had. They were building new things, things that had never existed before. The aliens had left behind some technology when they fled after, killing Maya. Pieces of their clothes, samples of their ship's hull, even the crystal that Maya had touched. Human scientists studied every atom. "Look at this," Dr. Yamamoto from Tokyo said, holding up a piece of alien metal. "It's not just strong. It remembers its shape. If we break it, it fixes itself." "Their energy weapons work by exciting quantum fields," reported Dr. Schmidt from Berlin. "But there's a pattern, a weakness. Their ships use something like gravity drives," added Dr. Okafor from Lagos. "But the field generators are vulnerable to specific frequencies. Every discovery was shared instantly with every other team on Earth. The internet became humanity's nervous system, connecting every brain that was working on the problem. Artificial intelligence programs designed to play games were reprogrammed to design weapons. Supercomputers that had been used to predict weather were now calculating how to destroy alien ships. The aliens were watching, of course. Their sensors could see what was happening on Earth. They intercepted human communications and listened to the planning. "The primitives are building weapons," reported Scout Captain Thys to the Zephyrian High Command. "Their technology is advancing rapidly." "How? Rapidly?" asked Admiral Korthax. "They have achieved in 3 months what should take them decades." The Admiral laughed. "Let them play with their toys. We have conquered species that had thousands of years to prepare. What can these humans accomplish in 6 months?" It was a good question. On the surface, the answer should have been nothing much. The Zephyrian Empire had technology that was thousands of years ahead of Earth. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses nearly perfect. But they misunderstood something basic about humans. When humans are angry, really angry, they do not think like other species. They do not follow the rules. They do not accept that some things are impossible. Dr. Sarah Chen worked 18 hours a day, sleeping in her laboratory. Her team grew from 20 scientists to 200 to 2,000. They were not just building better versions of human weapons. They were building things that did not exist in any textbook. "What if we don't try to break their shields?" she asked during one late-night session. "What if we make our weapons ignore them completely?" "You can't ignore a shield," said Dr. Martinez. "Their shields block matter and energy," Sarah explained. "But what about space itself? What if we make weapons that attack the fabric of reality?" It sounded crazy, but crazy was all they had. Around the world, other teams were asking their own crazy questions. What if human ships did not have to be big and strong? What if they could be small and smart instead? What if instead of building a few powerful weapons, they built millions of tiny ones? The aliens had another weakness they did not know about. They thought in straight lines: attack, defend, win, lose. But humans had learned war from each other, and humans were sneaky. They knew about tricks and traps and making the enemy think one thing while you did another. "We're not going to fight them like they expect," said General Patterson, the new head of Earth's combined military. "We're going to fight them like humans." Every day brought new breakthroughs, engines that bent space instead of pushing through it, computers that could think faster than alien brains, materials that existed in several dimensions at once, weapons that fired not bullets or energy, but possibilities. Most importantly, they were learning to work together in ways that no species had ever worked together before. Every human was part of the war effort. Children collected metal for recycling. Grandparents calculated orbital mechanics. Artists designed camouflage patterns that would confuse alien sensors. Maya's picture was in every workshop, every laboratory, every military base. Sometimes it was a formal school photo. Sometimes it was a drawing of her with butterfly wings. Always there were words underneath, "For Maya," or "Remember the child," or "Never again." The aliens watched and laughed. Let the primitives tire themselves, out building useless weapons. When the Zephyrian fleet returned, they would see how pointless it had all been. But some of the alien scouts were starting to worry. They had never seen a species mobilize like this. They had never seen a planet where every single person was working toward the same goal. They sent reports to their commanders, but the commanders did not want to hear about human unity or human anger. "They are insects," Admiral Korthax declared. "We will swat them when we return." 6 months after Maya Chen died, the Zephyrian fleet began moving toward Earth. They came in force this time. Not just a few scout ships, but a full conquest armada. 500 of their most powerful warships, carrying weapons that had destroyed civilizations. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The humans had 6 months to grieve, to rage, and to prepare. Now it was time to show the galaxy what happened when someone killed a human child. The war for Earth was about to begin. The Zephyrian monitoring stations picked up strange signals from Earth as the months passed. Their sensors showed massive construction projects happening all over the planet. Underground facilities were being built at an incredible speed. Factories that had made cars and computers were now making something else entirely. "What are those primitives building?" asked Intelligence Officer Zekthor as he studied the reports. "Weapons, obviously," replied Commander Vexhai, the same alien, who had killed Maya. "Let them waste their resources. Our shields can stop anything they might create." But the signals were confusing. Human technology was advancing in ways that made no sense. They had jumped from chemical rockets to something that bent space. Their computer systems were suddenly processing information faster than some Zephyrian equipment. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to be building millions of small devices instead of a few large weapons. "Their approach is inefficient," reported the Empire's military analysts. "Quantity cannot overcome quality. One of our dreadnoughts can destroy 1,000 of their primitive ships." The analysts were thinking like Zephyrians. They believed in big ships, powerful weapons, and straightforward battles. They had been winning wars this way for 10,000 years. Why should this time be different? Dr. Sarah Chen understood why it would be different. She stood in the main laboratory of Project Prometheus, looking at the wall covered with pictures of Maya. Her niece's smile reminded her every day why they were doing this work. "Show me the latest test results," she said to her team. Dr. Martinez brought up the holographic display. "The quantum disruptors are working perfectly. We can phase through their shield technology by attacking the quantum foam underneath reality. And the AI swarm intelligence?" "Better than we hoped," reported Dr. Yamamoto. "Each drone unit can make decisions in microseconds and share information instantly with every other unit. They learn and adapt faster than any pilot could react." "What about the temporal displacement field?" Dr. Petrov smiled. "That's our masterpiece. We can hide entire fleets in folded space-time. To enemy sensors, they simply don't exist until we want them to." The humans had learned something important from studying Zephyrian technology. The aliens were advanced, but they were also old. They had been using the same basic principles for thousands of years. Their science had become rigid, following rules that said certain things were impossible. Humans did not know those rules yet, so they broke them. "Their shields work by deflecting energy and matter," Dr. Chen explained to a group of military officers. "But they can't deflect things that exist in quantum superposition. Our new weapons exist and don't exist at the same time until they hit their target." General Patterson frowned. "How do you shoot something that doesn't exist?" "You don't shoot it. You think it into existence at the target location." The general still looked confused, but he had learned to trust the scientists. They had already created miracles. Engines that moved ships faster than light by convincing space they were already at their destination. Computers that solved problems by asking questions in multiple dimensions. Materials that were harder than diamond but weighed less than air. Zephyrians noticed these advances, but they misunderstood what they were seeing. Their scouts reported that humans were building primitive quantum devices and unstable reality manipulators. To them, this proved that humans were dangerous amateurs who would probably destroy themselves before the fleet arrived. "They're playing with forces they don't understand," Admiral Korthax told his officers. "When we arrive, we'll find a planet, full of ruins and radiation." But the humans understood more than the aliens thought. They understood that war was not just about who had the biggest guns. It was about who could think of new ways to fight. "We're not trying to outmuscle them," explained Colonel Rodriguez during a strategy meeting. "We're trying to outthink them." The human approach was completely different from anything in the galaxy. Instead of building a few huge ships, they built millions of small ones. Instead of making weapons that destroyed things, they made weapons that convinced things they had never existed. Instead of armor that stopped attacks, they developed systems that made their ships exist in several places at once. Most importantly, they were fighting as a single organism. Every human ship, weapon, and soldier was connected through quantum communication networks. They could share thoughts, strategies, and sensor data instantly across any distance. "It's like giving every cell in your body a direct phone line to your brain," Dr. Sarah Chen explained to a reporter. "Except the brain is an AI system that can think 1,000,000 times faster than any biological mind. The aliens had nothing like this. Their empire was spread across thousands of worlds, but each world fought its own battles. Their ships were powerful, but they acted independently. Their commanders were skilled, but they could only process information at the speed of thought. Humans were about to show them the difference between individual intelligence and collective intelligence. As the Zephyrian fleet moved closer to Earth, more strange reports reached their commanders. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from the human solar system, but the sources kept disappearing and reappearing. Ships that looked like they were there turned out to be somewhere else. Weapons that seemed to be charging never fired, but other weapons fired from places where no weapons should exist. Their technology is unstable, the fleet's science officer reported. Half their equipment doesn't seem to work properly, or it works in ways we don't understand, warned Scout Captain Theiss. She had been watching humans longer than anyone else. Sir, I recommend caution. These primitives are not acting like any species we've conquered before. Admiral Korthax dismissed her concerns. Fear makes you see threats where none exist, Captain. They are still using chemical explosives and metal. Projectiles. Our shields will stop anything they can throw at us. The Admiral was thinking like a Zephyrian. He expected humans to fight like Zephyrians. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon, strength against strength. He could not imagine an enemy that would ignore those rules completely. On Earth, the final preparations were being made. Maya's mother, Dr. Lin Chen, had spent the last 6 months working with the Psychological Warfare Division. Her job was to make sure every human understood what they were fighting for. This is not about territory or resources, she said in her final broadcast to Earth's population. This is about a little girl who wanted to touch something beautiful. This is about making sure no alien ever thinks they can hurt our children again. Every human ship carried Maya's picture somewhere inside it. Every weapon was inscribed with her name. Every soldier had memorized her story. They were not just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for the idea that innocence deserved protection. The Zephyrian fleet was 1 week away from Earth when they received their last intelligence report. Human activity had suddenly stopped. The strange energy signatures had disappeared. The chaotic construction projects had gone quiet. They've given up, Commander Vexhai said with satisfaction. They realize they cannot win against the might of the Empire. Or they're ready, whispered Scout Captain Thiss, but no one listened to her. In the dark between the stars, the Zephyrian fleet moved toward what they thought would be an easy victory. 500 of their most powerful ships, carrying weapons that had burned entire civilizations. They had no idea that Earth was gone. In its place waited something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy's long history. A planet full of angry humans who had spent 6 months learning how to break the laws of physics. The trap was set. The prey was coming. And Maya Chen's family was ready to show the universe what happened when someone hurt their little girl. Admiral Korthax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and stared at the impossible sight before him. Where Earth should have been, there was nothing but empty space filled with swirling lights that hurt to look at directly. Scan the area again, he ordered his sensor operator. Sir, I've run the scans 15 times. The planet, it's there and not there at the same time. Our sensors detect a massive gravitational signature, but visually there's nothing except that energy field. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system, expecting to find a primitive world cowering before their might. Instead, they found something that defied their understanding of reality. Earth existed in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously present in normal space and folded away into dimensions that their sensors could barely detect. How is this possible? Demanded Science Officer Veltar. No species has ever developed temporal displacement technology this advanced. It doesn't matter how, Admiral Korthax replied, though his voice carried less confidence than before. Whatever trick they're playing, we'll break through it. Begin bombardment of the energy field. The fleet's massive dreadnoughts turned their weapons toward the swirling distortion where Earth should be. Energy beams that could crack planets lanced out, striking the temporal field. The beams simply disappeared, absorbed into whatever impossible space the humans had created. No effect, sir, reported the weapons officer. It's like firing into a black hole, but the energy doesn't come back out. Before the Admiral could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm. Sir, multiple contacts emerging from stealth, unknown ship configurations approaching from all vectors. The holographic display filled with red dots, thousands of them, appearing from behind asteroids, emerging from the dark side of moons, materializing from what had seemed like empty space. Human ships unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. They were small, these human vessels. No larger than Zephyrian fighters, but there were so many of them. They moved in perfect coordination, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Each ship was sleek and dark, absorbing sensor waves instead of reflecting them. Impossible, whispered Commander Vexhai. Where did they build so many ships? Our intelligence showed limited manufacturing capability. The answer was something the Zephyrians could never have imagined. Humans had not built these ships in traditional factories. They had grown them using self-replicating nanotechnology, creating a fleet in the empty spaces between planets where alien sensors would never think to look. Captain Sarah Martinez commanded one of the lead attack squadrons. Maya Chen's school. Picture was taped to her instrument panel, and the little girl's smile gave her courage as she spoke into her communication system. All units, this is Phoenix Leader. Remember why we're here. Remember what they did to an innocent child. Today, we teach the galaxy that humans protect their young. Phoenix Leader, this is Wolfpack Actual, came another voice. We have the quantum disruptors online and ready. Eagle Squadron standing by, reported a third commander. Temporal displacement weapons are charged. All across the expanding cloud of human ships, similar conversations were taking place. But they were not really conversations in the traditional sense. The humans were linked through quantum communication networks that allowed them to share thoughts and data at the speed of light. Each pilot knew instantly what every other pilot was thinking, planning, feeling. The Zephyrians had never faced anything like this. Their ships fought as individuals, each captain making independent decisions. The humans fought as a single organism with thousands of bodies. Begin attack pattern Omega, Captain Martinez commanded. And immediately every human ship knew exactly what to do. The first wave of human vessels swept toward the Zephyrian fleet like a tide of darkness. The aliens opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space with deadly light. But the human ships did something impossible. They phased. One moment they were solid matter flying through space. The next moment, they were quantum possibilities, existing in the spaces between reality. The Zephyrian weapons passed harmlessly through them as if they were ghosts. What sorcery is this? Admiral Korthax demanded. Their ships are shifting in and out of quantum superposition, Science Officer Veltar reported, his voice shaking. They exist and don't exist simultaneously. Our weapons can't lock onto targets that aren't entirely real. The human ships reformed into solid matter just as they reached the Zephyrian fleet. But instead of firing conventional weapons, they did something even more terrifying. They fired weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of reality itself. Quantum disruptors struck. The alien ships not destroying them but convincing the universe that they had never existed in the first place. Temporal displacement beams aged sections of enemy hulls by millions of years in seconds, causing them to crumble into cosmic dust. Reality alteration fields made Zephyrian weapons forget how to function. The mighty dreadnought Stellar Crusher simply began to unravel. Its hull didn't explode or burn. It dissolved as the quantum bonds holding its atoms together decided they would rather not exist today. Impossible! Screamed the Stellar Crusher's captain as his ship became a cloud of component particles. No species fights like this. But humans were not like other species. They had learned war by fighting each other for thousands of years, and humans were creative in their destruction. More importantly, they were fighting for something the Zephyrians could never understand. The memory of a curious little girl who had died for touching something beautiful. Admiral Korthax watched. His fleet began to disintegrate around him. Ships that had conquered star systems were falling apart like sandcastles in a hurricane. His tactical display showed impossible things. Human weapons that fired backwards through time, ships that attacked from several different locations simultaneously, projectiles that somehow knew exactly where their targets would be before their targets knew it themselves. All ships, focus fire on the human command vessel, he ordered desperately. Sir, we can't identify a command vessel, his tactical officer replied. They all seemed to be commanding each other. This was another thing the Zephyrians could not understand. Human military doctrine had evolved during their preparation. They had no central command structure because they didn't need one. Every pilot was connected to every other pilot through quantum networks. Every ship was part of a collective intelligence that could make tactical decisions faster than any individual mind. Captain Martinez felt the Admiral's order ripple through the alien fleet's communications. Through her quantum link, she shared this information with every other human pilot instantly. They're looking for our command ship, she told the fleet mind. Time for Phase 2. Suddenly, every human ship began broadcasting the same signal. To Zephyrian sensors, it looked like every single human vessel was the command ship. The aliens opened fire wildly, trying to hit all of them at once, but the humans had one more surprise. Now, Captain Martinez whispered, and the real attack began. From the quantum fold where Earth was hidden, new ships emerged. Not the small, nimble fighters that had been harassing the Zephyrian fleet, but something much larger. These ships were different. built using alien technology that humans had reverse-engineered and improved. They looked almost organic, like living creatures made of metal and energy. Their hulls rippled with patterns that hurt to look at, and they moved through space in ways that violated several laws of physics. "My God," whispered Admiral Korthax as he saw them. "What have they become?" The answer was simple and terrifying. They had become something new, something that had never existed in the galaxy before. They had become humans with access to technology. They understood better than its original creators. The new ships opened fire, and their weapons were beyond anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Beams that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Projectiles that traveled through folded space to hit their targets from impossible angles. Energy fields that convinced matter it would rather be antimatter today. But the most devastating weapon was something the aliens could never have prepared for. It was hope. Human hope, transmitted through quantum networks and focused into a coherent force that could reshape reality itself. The Zephyrian fleet, which had conquered 3,000 worlds, began to break apart under an assault of weaponized possibility. And through it all, in every human ship, Maya Chen's picture smiled down at warriors who had turned the laws of physics into tools of vengeance. The galaxy was about to learn that there were consequences for hurting human children. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet at Earth was only the beginning. As Admiral Korthax watched his mighty ships dissolve into quantum foam, he could not know that across the galaxy, the true attack had already started. For 6 months, while the aliens focused on Earth's preparations, small human ships had been spreading throughout Zephyrian space. They used stolen alien transportation technology, hiding in the spaces between stars and the dark matter shadows that sensors could not penetrate. These ships carried no weapons in the traditional sense. Instead, they carried something far more dangerous: human ingenuity compressed into microscopic packages. On the Zephyrian capital world of Zeftar, the morning began like any other morning for the past 10,000 years. The great city spires reached toward the sky, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of 3 suns. Millions of Zephyrians went about their daily lives, secure in the knowledge that their empire was eternal and their technology supreme. Then, the nanomachines activated. Dr. Sarah Chen had designed them herself, working 18-hour days in the hidden laboratories beneath Earth. Each nanomachine was smaller than a virus, but more complex than a supercomputer. They had been programmed with one simple directive: find anything with a Zephyrian quantum signature and take it apart, one atom at a time. The nanomachines had been waiting in the infrastructure of 1,000 worlds, invisible and patient. Now, they woke up and began to feed. On Zeftar, the planetary defense grid flickered and went dark. Emergency power systems tried to activate, but the nanomachines had already consumed the quantum processing cores that made them work. Communication arrays fell silent as their crystalline matrices were systematically dismantled from within. "What's happening?" demanded Governor Zalketh as his palace began to shake. Outside his windows, the city spires were beginning to sway and crack. "Unknown, sir," replied his aide, frantically working at a control panel that was no longer responding. "All systems are failing simultaneously. It's as if the infrastructure is being eaten from the inside." The governor was right to be afraid. The nanomachines were not just destroying Zephyrian technology, they were learning from it. Each device they consumed taught them new ways to attack the next device. They evolved and adapted faster than any biological organism could, spreading through the Galactic Empire's infrastructure like a digital plague. But the nanomachines were only part of humanity's revenge. On the prison world of Torgon, something else was happening. For centuries, the Zephyrians had used this planet to hold the survivors of conquered species. Millions of beings from thousands of worlds, kept in energy cages and forced to mine rare crystals for their captors. The prisons, guard systems had been failing all morning. Energy barriers flickered and died. Automated weapons turned on their own operators. Security doors opened by themselves. But more importantly, packages were materializing in the prison yards, small containers that opened to reveal weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Weapons designed by humans who understood what it meant to fight for freedom. Krexhan was a survivor of the Altarian Confederacy, a civilization that had fought the Zephyrians for 20 years before falling. He had been a slave for 30 years, watching his people die in the crystal mines. When the strange weapons appeared in his cell, he knew exactly what they were: hope. "Brothers and sisters," he called out to the other prisoners as he picked up a device that hummed with barely contained energy. "The humans have come to free us." The rebellion spread across Torgon in minutes, weapons that could cut through any material, shields that made the wearer nearly invulnerable, communication devices that connected every freed prisoner to a vast network of resistance fighters across the galaxy. Most importantly, each package contained detailed intelligence about Zephyrian military installations, troop movements, and the locations of their leaders. Information that could only have come from humans who had infiltrated the deepest levels of the Empire's security. On 100 worlds, the pattern repeated. Prison planets erupted in rebellion. Military bases found their weapons turned against them. Communication networks carried messages of resistance instead of orders from the capital. Emperor Zarthul sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Empire, watching his 10,000-year reign crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from every corner of Zephyrian space, worlds going dark, fleets losing contact, rebellions sparking, on planets that had been peaceful for centuries. How is this possible? He demanded of his advisors. No species has ever mounted a coordinated attack across such distances. The humans, my emperor, said General Keftar, his voice shaking. They've been planning this since we killed their child. They didn't just prepare to defend their world, they prepared to destroy our entire civilization. The Emperor's black eyes narrowed. Send word to Admiral Korthax. Tell him to ignore Earth and return to defend the capital. Sir, General Keftar said quietly. We lost contact with the Admiral's fleet 6 hours ago. At that moment, the lights in the throne room flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in a hellish red glow. Through the great windows, the Emperor could see the city spires of his capital beginning to collapse as nanomachines consumed their support structures. But the collapse of infrastructure was not the worst part of humanity's revenge. The worst part was what came next. Every communication array in Zephyrian space suddenly activated simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, every device capable of displaying information showed the same thing, the face of a human child. Maya Chen's school photograph, the same picture that had motivated humanity's transformation. Then came the voice, not threatening or angry, but sad and tired. Dr. Lin Chen spoke to every Zephyrian in the galaxy at once, her words translated into every alien language by computers that had learned to think faster than gods. This is Dr. Lin Chen of Earth, she said. You killed my daughter 6 months ago. Her name was Maya. She was 8 years old. She liked butterflies and asking questions. She touched one of your sacred objects because she thought it was beautiful. The image changed to show Maya playing in a garden, chasing butterflies and laughing. Then it showed her lying still on the floor of the United Nations building, killed by alien weapons for the crime of curiosity. My daughter died because one of your soldiers decided that a child's wonder was worth less than your traditions, Dr. Chen continued. Today, your empire dies because humanity decided that no child should ever die for being curious again. The SIG transmission ended, replaced by a simple message in letters that burned across every screen in Zephyrian space. A human child died. Your empire dies with her. The psychological impact was devastating. Across the galaxy, Zephyrian soldiers stopped fighting. Many of them had young ones of their own. They had never seen the footage of Maya's death before. Their government had hidden it from them. Now they understood what their empire had done, and why the universe was ending around them. Emperor Zarthul watched his civilization collapse from his dying palace. The nanomachines had reached the throne room, and the great crystal that had powered his empire for millennia was beginning to crack and crumble. We could negotiate, suggested General Keftar desperately. Offer them reparations, territory, technology. With what? The Emperor asked. They've taken everything. Our fleets are destroyed. Our infrastructure is gone. Our slaves have turned against us. He laughed bitterly. We thought we were conquering another primitive species. Instead, we woke something that should have been left sleeping. The general tried one more time. Perhaps if we offered to execute Commander Vexhai, the one who killed the child. Commander Vexhai died at Earth 6 hours ago, the Emperor replied. His ship was one of the first to be unmade by their impossible weapons. No, General. This is not about justice anymore. This is about consequences. As if summoned by his words, the great doors of the throne room opened. Through them walked figures in strange armor that seemed to be made of living light. Humans, but humans transformed by technology that had evolved beyond anything their species had possessed a year ago. The leader removed her helmet, revealing a face marked by grief and determination. It was Dr. Sarah Chen, Maya's aunt, come to personally oversee the end of the empire that had killed her niece. Emperor Zarthul, she said formally. I am Dr. Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Coalition. By the authority of the human species, and in the name of Maya Chen, I declare your empire forfeit. You would destroy an entire civilization for one child? The Emperor asked. Dr. Chen looked at him with eyes that had seen too much sorrow and learned too much about the dark spaces between stars. We would remake the galaxy to ensure that no species ever again thinks it acceptable to kill children for being curious. Outside the windows, the last of the great city spires fell. Across the galaxy, 10,000 years of Zephyrian dominance crumbled into history. But from the ashes of the old empire, something new was being born. On every world that had been enslaved, humans were teaching freed species how to build better societies. Technologies that had been hoarded by the empire were now shared freely. Weapons of war were transformed into tools of peace and exploration. The galaxy would remember the Zephyrian Empire as a cautionary tale. They would remember how an entire civilization fell because they underestimated a species' love.